This video is an attempt to answer all of the many questions I get about stalled weight loss progress. I get a lot of emails from people. Many of them are doing great. Most of them are doing great. But of course, invariably, there's going to come in those who have done great and then they've stalled or they've run into an issue that they're finding has slowed down their weight loss. Now, the thing is, most of what I'm going to cover here has been covered in my other videos to some degree or another. In fact, I think just about all of them have. But I'm presenting this here to package it all together for you so that you can basically do a diagnostic on your troubles before you contact me. Because if you email me, I'm going to ask you these same questions. So here we go. We're going to start with some considerations and then move on down a list of 13 items. Number one, what losses are you expecting? This is super important because so many people contact me and they really don't have a clear understanding of how fast they should lose. If you are a 5-foot female and you have 10 pounds or 15 pounds to lose, you are not going to lose a lot of weight per week. You're just not, because your body requires very few calories to keep you going. Now, if you are 100 plus pounds overweight, you should and could expect bigger losses because your body requires more to keep you going. Now, you'll notice the picture in the background. That's me right after Michaela was born. I was about 360 pounds there. And then, of course, that's the other one is December of 2015. She hadn't turned 8 yet. I was 189.6, I believe. My losses will invariably be different than your losses, unless you're comparable to my weight and body type. That's always the case. So you have to ask the question, what losses were you or are you expecting? And so many people really expect to lose 2 or 3 pounds a week, and they only have 15 pounds to lose. Realistically, you're probably going to lose a quarter or a half of a pound per week if you are at a steady loss. So you have to be very determined in terms of your expectations. You have to understand what it is that you should be losing. Your metabolism plays a key role in this. So that's the first consideration. Number two, have you given it 6 weeks yet? I get lots of people who contact me and it's been 2, 3, 4 days after they've started, or a week or even 2 weeks, and they contact me and they say, it's not working. I didn't lose anything. I got on the scale and the scale didn't go down. Dude, you got to give it time. And I don't mean 2 weeks. I mean 6 weeks. You need to give it 6 weeks, and you're going to see if you're weighing 1 time a week and recording your weight, you're going to find that you're making steady progress, and you should be recording your losses weekly, 1 day per week. So many people, because they have a poor understanding of time, and we all do, we're humans, and I've said before, we suck at measuring time. We expect too much too fast. You got to give it 6 weeks. You should see a marked difference at the end of 6 weeks. So, and that's why I get mad when people say, well, I've tried everything. Well, you really haven't tried everything, because there's an awful lot of things. If you spent 6 weeks doing every diet that exists, you'd have to be very, very old, because there's really probably not that much time in your life, to be honest. So let's be fair. Have you given it 6 weeks? If you need pointers along the way, that's one thing. You feel like you need pointers, of course, most of you know I have a professional program for coaching for an individual, but you need to give it 6 weeks before you call how effective it is. That's just a basic rule. Number 3, what medical conditions are you up against? You can add to that. What medications are you taking? Or what supplements are you taking, if any? Your medical conditions are important if you are in poor health or questionable health, or if you have some disability of some sort. There's nothing wrong with that. You just have to get in front of it. So if you are hypothyroid, what you need to do as you're beginning to lose weight is you need to treat that condition. And I will do another video at another time on that subject. But that's just an example. If you do have a medical condition that you know affects weight loss, you need to get in front of it and address it, either in diet or through some other way. That's number 3. Number 4, how hungry are you daily? Are you tracking your calories? This is to say, are you eating until full, basically? This is very important because I've said before, you need to be successfully on a fasting plan, moderately hungry. You should not be feeling full, completely full all the time. And the reason for that is because your calories are going to be, that's an indication that you are getting to your calorie level. So if you want to lose weight and you're eating until you are full and you are also overweight, then you're getting too many calories. That's really important. You should expect a moderate amount of hunger. If you are not moderately hungry, then that's why you're probably not losing weight, because you're eating too much at the meal. Your calories are too much. Now, here's where people flip out, because sites like MyFitnessPal just freak out when people go under 1,200 calories. In fact, they won't let you post your daily calorie log for everyone to see, because they think that encourages an eating disorder, and they freak out. Well, they're absolutely stupid about that. They shouldn't. For some people, 700 calories, 800 calories for a limited time can be a very good idea, because some people's bodies only use about 1,000. If I'm talking about a 4'9" or 4'10" female with certain metabolic disorders, they're not going to use the same calories as someone else with a different metabolism. So fasting can be approached in the low calorie range, and I get questions on calories, and you don't need to really worry about that as much, but you do need to understand that an indicator of how much you're going to lose is how hungry you are. As the hours go by after the meal, you're going to face hunger. You have to make peace with that. If you are eating until you are full and you are 100 pounds overweight, you're probably going to be eating about 5,000, 4,000 calories a day to just feel totally full. And if you're doing that, you're going to notice you might lose weight initially, because that's probably going to be less than you were eating, maybe, but you're not going to lose much. Your weight loss is naturally going to stall, because your body's going to get to that point where that's your set point. That's where your body's good. It's saying, I can live like this. How do you get past that? You start rationing your calories. That's why the one plate rule exists, and I get people back to it. For those of you who are really big, you need to lean on my every word, because I started this channel to help people who were really big. That was my first priority. If you're 90, 100, 150 pounds overweight, then you're way off the edge of the envelope in terms of your hunger signals. So you can't say, well, I'm just going to eat until I'm full. Because you can't do that. If you're 15, 20 pounds overweight, you probably can and still see some progress. But then bear in mind, your losses are going to slow on the negative side. Your losses are going to slow the smaller you get, because your body takes less calories to function, and therefore you're going to have to push yourself a little. So you're going to have to make peace with hunger one way or another, and learn to get your high, to get into that state of hunger high that I talk about, through fasting. There's no other way. You cannot run from hunger. Number 5, are you exercising? You should not be exercising when you are looking to lose weight. And yet people write me every day, yes, every day, and they're saying, I'm exercising 6 days a week, I'm doing this. First thing I say, drop the exercising, you'll start losing weight. They disagree, they doubt me, but that's the way it goes. When you exercise, you put your body in a state of stress. Your body's already dealing with the state of stress from fasting, which does exert some stress on your adrenals and your bodily functions. So if you're stressed out and you're amped up, and a few other things we're going to talk about in here can contribute to that stress, that's going to slow your losses. We'll come back to that in a minute. Drop the exercise. It should be moderate to, at the most, brisk walking, about 20 minutes a day. That's really, or less, depending on, you should not be taxing your body for ideal weight loss. Please believe me on that. This is the probably the biggest thing I get from people whose losses slow down. You've got to let your body get in that happy space where it can relax and not freak out. Okay, we'll come back to that. Number 6, are you splurging too much or not enough. Now, there are those who don't do as well with a splurge day because they had an eating disorder or have an eating disorder, and they kind of derail themselves by compulsive eating. You don't have to have a splurge day, but you really should at some point. Usually once every 2 weeks is good for most people. Sometimes if you are pretty fit and you're looking to start transitioning toward maintaining, then you can do that once a week. Some people with metabolisms that are normal can splurge once a week and still lose, but that varies. You can watch my other video on splurging and you can get more on that. But basically, some people splurge too much. They start splurging and then they splurge back to back. They start taking 2 splurge days at once, or have two days back to back. And pretty soon they're splurging so much that they start to break their body's cycle that as it goes back into fasting after a splurge day. Splurge day is 1 day only. Then you're back into the fasting cycle. Now, you also, like I said, you need to have a splurge day at some point because that's what helps push your metabolism into high gear, which, by the way, is why a straight fast is not as effective for losing weight as the OMAD fast. Because when you're eating once a day, your body keeps itself, the metabolism, moving. When you're doing a pure fast, it slows a little bit too much to give you very fast weight loss. So that's why most people, I tell them go with OMAD because that's going to get your best results. You'll lose weight doing a straight fast, but not as fast as if you do the OMAD fast. So the splurging is a consideration too. Number 7, are you doing no-calorie beverages? Many people write me and they are knocking themselves out of fasting by having sugar drinks in the day. Or they're doing their coffee and they're putting a whole bunch of cream and sugar in it. That's a super quick way to knock you out of your fasting state, even if it's a little. You can't do that and stay in fasting because your body is going to jump out of fasting and it's going to start producing insulin. You're going to start getting insulin responses. And when you do that, not only are you out of fasting, but your digestive juices are going to start expecting more food and you're going to get hungrier. One of the things, when I tried adding calorie beverages to my day, I noticed when I was losing the bulk of my weight that it was crazy because I kept noticing that everywhere I was, I would get hungrier and I would say, wow, now I've really got the hunger pains because I got an insulin response, and then therefore your digestive juices are getting ready to come alive. And so that's why that's no good. You need to make sure your calories throughout the day are just at the meal, and then after that you are getting basically no calories. You need no more tea, water, coffee, diet soda, whatever you're going to do. Mainly, cold water is a great way to go because you're always burning calories because your body has to heat it back up. More on that in another time, but you don't want to be getting caloric beverages during the fast. Number 8, have you adjusted your food makeup or carbs, your carbs, protein, and fat, and so forth? Now, why do I mention this? People have said, I thought you said it doesn't matter what you eat at the meal. Can't I just eat what I want? That's true. Ideally, that's true. People like myself with a very normal pancreas, I'm not freaking out with carbs. I have actually a little bit overactive of a pancreas. I've got a good, strong pancreas that's ready to go. So I can eat sugar and my body will stay in the game. That said, some people aren't quite like that. And what people don't understand about diabetes is that diabetes is a big, wide range. And a lot of people have it and they don't even know it. And I don't mean high blood sugar diabetes. I mean, they are in the pre-diabetic stages and it'll be another 5, 10, 15 years before it develops. And one of the ways you know that is your blood sugar continually starts creeping up, but not as much to where you could ever pick it up on a meter. And as a result, you need to have higher protein, higher fat to have an ideal response at your one meal. So getting back to the initial point, if your losses are slower and you're finding that eating higher protein and fat seems to increase your losses, quit arguing with nature. Go with that. I've talked to several people this week, and high protein and high fat and low carb works better for their plan. And let me stop here and say this, because most people, everybody, and myself included to some degree, you'll see me do starches in my meals and fruits and other things that are not low glycemic. Even during all of my weight loss, my big weight loss, I did not do cakes, cookies, and sugars, almost never. I might put one or two on a plate, but I didn't do that because that is something that the calories are too dense. And so if you fill a plate up with stuff like that, you're going to feel real bad after the meal. You'll get too much of an insulin response. And in fact, it wasn't until November, I think about middle of November, that I put a big piece of cake on one of my one meal plates, and I got a huge insulin response. I had to lay down. I was like, oh, this feels terrible. I'm so glad I got rid of this. So let me say this. You need to adjust your food makeup if you are experiencing stalled weight loss. So consider eating more protein. Consider eating lower glycemic foods and higher fat foods if your body does not handle that as well. And usually it's the ladies that don't process sugars quite as well as the men. That's not always true, however. I get contacted by plenty of men who are diabetic or borderline diabetic, and they know it. And they say, my sugars, after a finger prick test, their sugar will be about 160, 180, which is too high. If you just switch over and say, I'm going to have green beans instead of something else, instead of rice and something, that's a reasonable measure. But then again, don't get too carried away, because most people can do normal whole grains and stuff like that if it's once a day, and their body learns to adjust to it. Because the longer you do one meal a day, your sugars adjust. Sometimes it takes a while for people, but they do adjust. So if you haven't done this, then you need to do this if you've been having issues with your losses. Though usually with quite a few people, just the one meal normalizes and you find a happy medium. Number 9, are you getting enough water? Hydration is important to weight loss. Try not to overdo other beverages. Water is always the best. You are made up of it. Even if you're a little dehydrated, that will slow down weight loss. Trust me on that. It will slow down your weight loss. My slowest weeks, the longest plateaus, were also looking back, it turned out that I had the most trouble losing weight. My plateaus were longest when I had less water. That's something I just, a few months ago, I've just been thinking about, and I realized I would sometimes go too heavy on diet soda or Mio water drinks or something artificial, which is, of course, never as good for you as water. Number 10, are you sleeping regularly? Go back and watch my video on the people that have the most trouble losing weight and the characteristics, 6 characteristics. If you're not sleeping regularly, your body's cortisol release mechanism is screwed up. And so, and of course, your melatonin and your insulin are connected. So your blood sugar is going to be screwy if you are not sleeping on a regular schedule. What do I mean by a regular schedule? A consistent schedule. If you are a shift worker, then you're going to have to try to get really good sleep somehow. I actually think it's the most dangerous thing you can do. You should not have a completely varying sleep schedule. It's just we're not designed for that, if you will. So are you sleeping regularly? Super important, because that affects your metabolism. You need to sleep. And keep in mind, I lost my weight on nights, so you can do it working nights, but you need to have a consistent sleep pattern. Number 11, how much sunlight are you getting? You need to be getting, ideally, 25 to 35 minutes of sunlight per day. Doesn't matter when, but try to get 35 minutes of direct or indirect sunlight, preferably direct, because that creates in your body D vitamins, and it brings to life all of the rest of your internal organs that aid in digestion. Of course, your pancreas, your liver, your kidneys, all of those things are affected. All of the other vitamins that you consume are affected by what you get from the sun. You're going to be reading a lot more of this, and there's already articles on it that have been written that it's one of the biggest things now that they're finding out. So, and I noticed the most sunlight also coincided with the best losses I had. So you want to get as much sunlight as possible. Number 12, how much caffeine are you getting? Are you monitoring how much caffeine? Remember I said we were going to come back to exercise, and I mentioned stress. I also mentioned it in connection with a few other things, with like sleep. The reason this is so important is caffeine is so important is because caffeine is a great weight loss beverage. It's good to have a moderate amount. That's about 2 cups of coffee, maybe 3 per day. No more than that. Why do I say that? Because caffeine raises blood pressure. It also raises your stress levels. And if your body is already in a state of stress, if you're exercising a little bit too much, if you're not sleeping regularly, if you're fighting with your spouse, if you got demoted at work or you have some kind of stress going on, that's going to start to release cortisol, which you remember is the stress hormone that messes so many people up. And it makes you hungrier. It makes you worse off when you have more stress. So you need to monitor, while some caffeine is good, you need to monitor how much you are getting. And I have worked with several people now who dropped their caffeine and started losing a lot more weight. So word to the wise, you need to monitor your caffeine intake. Number 13, and finally, are you consistent in monitoring all of these things? This is to say, how consistent, how stress-free is your life in general? Do you have a pattern? Do you have a regimen? Are you a person who can go through life consistently doing these things? Give me any day someone who is consistent in their patterns over someone who is very extreme. It doesn't matter how determined you are. You can be the most determined masochist and say, I'm going to punish my body. I'm going to go 3 days without eating. I'm going to, I'll take the guy or gal who is just consistent every day and is a lot more focused on slow and steady wins the race. I'm not interested in how extreme you can be. You don't want to be a person given to extremes. What you want to be is someone who can apply the principles here. And folks, in conclusion, the big point here is that if you apply and you're observant of these things that I've mentioned to you, your weight loss is going to be awesome. You're going to manage yourself properly. And if you just pay attention to these things and you listen to what I'm telling you, especially those of you who are on the big side, you need to lose a lot of weight, you're going to see amazing success. If we're all different to some degree. There may be other factors, but these are the basics. So I do hope this video has helped you.